me a question about movies.
How do you feel about J.J. Abrams returning for episode 9?
Personally, I think he's a safe choice, but I think he's necessary. Colin Trevorrow started off with the movie that I would say is not very memorable.
Mm-hmm.
Jurassic World is a fun movie.
Yeah.
I feel like it's supposed to be a commentary on modern blockbusters, which is why in the beginning the plesiosaurus immediately bites the giant shark, which is the death of the original blockbuster Jaws. It goes throughout there over the top with the product placement with the Verizon.
You think it
presents.
got that meta?
I believe later on in the movie, to accentuate where a modern blockbuster is supposed to go, they throw every dinosaur that you've seen in the whole movie in the last minute and a half. I believe Jurassic World was supposed to be smarter than it was, but failed. Colin Trevorrow then followed it up with Book of Henry, which is a horrible, horrible movie, and I'm happy that he was removed from the project. J.J. Abrams, on the other hand, I feel like he gets... I don't know why Force Awakens gets a lot of flack. I think it was...
I know why it gets a lot of flack.
It was the reset that Star Wars needed. If it immediately went to something batshit, we would end up with another Phantom Menace. I think it gives us the leeway to get Last Jedi. And then Episode 9, J.J. Abrams is not a stupid person. He's a very good writer. You watch the 2 Star Trek movies, you watch Mission Impossible 3, you watch Lost, you watch Alias.
I have to interject. I have two things to say.
Go right ahead.
Alright, so first thing is, I love The Force Awakens. I actually cried for 2 scenes in the Force Awakens. One of them involved X-Wings. Damn, I love X-Wings. And that brought a tear to my eye.
And the other one was the Rapthar scene?
No, the other one was the Han Solo dying. Because actually, no, it was when Chewie got
Spoiler
mad.
alert.
This is years ago. I don't care. The other thing I have to say is that, so the first thing still is that the flack that received, I can understand. Having talked to people in person, it's that old fans, and I mean like people who were diehard fans of the original Star Wars before it was even called A New Hope, they all felt it was the exact same movie. Oh no, the Death Star. Oh no, another. So
but I feel like it's not. It's the Mad Max Fury Road of these Star Wars franchises.
I realize
it's the necessary reboot that follows a lot
of the
I'm
same
agreeing
with you.
Storylines.
I'm not
disagreeing. I'm just putting information.
But I totally see where they're coming from.
Yeah, and I can understand it. But to the point, I'm gonna put on Force Awakens more often than I put on A New Hope because it's a modernized, better retelling of it. Similar to how in the last few years since Fury Road came out, I've had much less inkling to watch Road Warrior because I'm aware that they are similar movies, and I could just follow the more modern, better paced one. I'm not going to watch Spectre over You Only Live Twice or On Her Majesty's Secret Service, but there are some movies that what they do is they recreate something that transcends the original. Another example of this is the True Grit remake. That movie has so much more substance and better acting than the John Wayne vessel, even though it got him an Oscar for God knows why. John Wayne's very good at being John Wayne.
Oh, Grum.
John Wayne is not a very good actor, which is why we get Jeff Bridges.
But isn't that the point?
Man.
Isn't that the point though? Like John Wayne is very much like he's always the same because you go to a movie to see John Wayne.
He's Americana.
I get that. My point was more. I think the quality of the movie is a lot better.
But John Wayne is his hamburgers and Coca-Cola, James Dean, and hot rods. He's Americana.
I also think the definition of what makes a movie good, like or objectively good, is very different than it was in the time of John Wayne than it is now.
I agree with that because Star Wars and Jaws are 2 movies that set the precedent for modern day pacing.
Okay.
Without a movie like Jaws, Jaws is a perfect movie with a perfect 3-act script. Everything falls into line. Everything that's introduced has a payoff. Every single character is fleshed out, and in the end, everything just.
I disagree. There's not enough adultery in it, like the book.
The novel Jaws is a solid 7. The film Jaws is a perfect 10. Back to what I was saying. The modern day pacing is much better.
Okay, now back to what I was saying.
It was more on spectacle.
My number 2 thing I had to say.
If you compare the difference between Dr. No versus Skyfall, you'll notice that Skyfall has characters in set pieces that push the plot forward, and what this does is it allows you to grow with the character as the scenes change, to the point where every time you see Silva, something sinister is being introduced. Every time you see James, he's either failing, which represents his failing as a Secret Service agent, or him getting better, which shows that he's overcome the problems that he had, the mental problems, the alcoholism, the drug abuse, all of that. Watching Dr. No, it is a lot of, we have the title, we are going to make every step is going to be a second of film, because we need to see James Bond walk from the airport to this. Because back then it was about, look at these locations, as opposed to look at this movie. It lacks that sort of narrative focus.
Okay, so kind of wrapping back around to the first point here of the modern reboot of the first Star Wars movie of A New Hope plotline into J.J. Abrams' version of telling that story. Do you think then that J.J. Abrams accomplished the idea of following pacing where everything established does pay off necessarily?
The only things that are somewhat questionable are the things that need the other movies to pay them off.
Okay.
So things like Maz Kanata setting up how you've lost your family, you know this, but all of this still also pays towards Rey's backstory. And the only other thing I would really point out is probably the Rapthars. Because they're there to show that, oh, Han Solo's still the smuggler that he once was, but if they reference them and then they continue on there, or they killed the people with the Rapthars, there's no reason for the scene to be a 10-minute long chase scene through a frigate. Other than that, though, the movie is paced absolutely perfectly. He brought back a movie the way you remembered it.
Yes.
Because there's a difference between remaking a movie and making it the way you thought it was.
Ghostbusters.
And that's you get movies like Ghostbusters, you get movies like RoboCop, where they are so much, look at how smart we are, we did this again, but they've missed the entire point.
And I think too, the benefit of Star Wars though, as opposed to Ghostbusters, and I think this was one of the major arguments for Ghostbusters, where Ghostbusters, had it referenced the previous team, would have been a better film. Whereas Star Wars has that ability because it is referencing Episode 4. So we know that at the end of December, or middle, whatever it is, December this year, we're going to have the release of Star Wars Episode 8, correct?
Yes.
What does this movie need to establish that then J.J. Abrams can finalize in Episode 9? Luke is stepping down as the sigil of what the Jedi as fighters of good are. Because this also goes into the idea of the reason that you have the good Jedi and the evil Sith, and I'm using air quotes there, is because the Force really isn't light or dark. It is gray. It's how you use it that influences it. At least my understanding.
It has to do with the balance.
Okay.
I believe Luke is stepping down so that way it falls back to one Jedi, one Sith, falling on Rey and Kylo Ren.
Okay.
The Force needs to function in balance, otherwise it will continue to flip-flop.
So balance.
Balance. It all has to do with that. And I think all they really need to do with Last Jedi is pay off a little bit of why Maz Kanata knows so much, a little bit of Rey's heritage, who is this dark force that's lingering, but I feel like they could do the same thing they did with the Emperor, where keep him in the shadows, but just let you know that he's in charge.
Okay.
Because even in Force Awakens, they were like, here's this figure.
Yeah.
I don't know what he is, but he's there.
Star Wars now has two wizard figures. You're gonna have Maz Kanata, who is the wizard where it's like she knows a lot, but Luke is the actual wizard that knows a lot of the universe of the Force. So Rey, if she's going to,
I think it's the Yoda and Ben.
Okay, yeah, you're right.
Yeah, I was just gonna say.
Yeah, you're right.
Luke takes over the Obi-Wan.
So Luke is going to take over the Obi-Wan. So, but then are you saying then that Maz Kanata is more pivotal? Because Ben Kenobi is important, but you would argue that Yoda is the finalizer to his training, whereas now we're saying Luke is taking that over as Luke is being Ben. Is Maz Kanata going to be the key for Rey?
Well, she does have the lightsaber.
She does, and maybe knows where.
That's the thing.
Also,
I feel like
the few things she says it chose you.
Yeah.
Yes.
So what she knows is something very deep.
Yeah. And I feel like at this point, Last Jedi has a lot more freedom than something like Force Awakens. Because Force Awakens needs to remind you that you love all these characters, while also making new characters. And I feel like it did a good job of bringing back everyone, but it's reestablished these old characters in a new world with a bunch of new characters that you frankly care a lot about. Last Jedi has a lot more freedom, where it could basically do whatever it wants, and as long as it fits into the aesthetic and feel that a Star Wars movies have, it really has nowhere to fall. I am not seeing these movies to re-see the same three movies.
Yeah.
It's the same reason I'm fine with Force Awakens, but if Last Jedi turns out to be Empire, that's where the disappointment starts.
So excited for episode 8 and 9. Yeah.
Excited for 8? Yes. Because of Looper. I'm excited that there are going to be an episode 9. The thing is, right now, without 8, I can't be excited for 9.
Are you listening to us, episode 8? You better live up to that
I
expectation.
swear to God, Ryan Johnson, you made Looper and I loved it. Put rock salt in episode 8. That's all I'm saying.
Thank you all for listening.